The elevator doors closed behind me at 9:03 a.m., carrying me down from the 47th floor of Morrison & Associates for what I thought was the last time. In my hand, I clutched a termination letter signed by Victoria Morrison herself, the woman who had just destroyed my career over a lie. But as those floors ticked by, something shifted inside me. By the time I reached the lobby, I wasn't thinking about what I had lost. I was thinking about what I was about to take. 3 hours later, I would walk back into that same building, not as a fired employee, but as the new owner of their most valuable client contract. This is the story of how the worst morning of my life became the best day of my career. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. My name is Rachel Patterson, and until 9 a.m. on a Tuesday in October, I was the Senior Account Director at Morrison & Associates, one of Atlanta's most prestigious marketing agencies. For 4 years, I had poured my soul into that company, building client relationships that generated over $12 million in annual revenue. I wasn't just good at my job, I was exceptional. Morrison & Associates specialized in luxury brand marketing, and I had a gift for understanding what made wealthy clients tick. While other account directors focused on flashy presentations and buzzword-heavy proposals, I built genuine relationships. I remembered birthdays, investment preferences, and family details. I knew that Margaret Whitfield, CEO of Whitfield Hotels, collected vintage fountain pens. I knew that Thomas Chen, owner of Chen Automotive Group, had a daughter studying abroad in Italy. These weren't just clients to me. They were people I genuinely cared about. My crown jewel was the Blackstone Industries account. Richard Blackstone had built his manufacturing empire from a single factory floor, and now his company generated $800 million annually. The marketing contract with Morrison & Associates was worth $4.2 million per year, nearly 40% of our agency's total revenue. I had landed that account 2 years ago, not through cold calling or aggressive sales tactics, but by spending 6 months researching Blackstone's industry challenges and crafting a comprehensive brand strategy that addressed their specific needs. Richard Blackstone was an old-school business. He valued loyalty, expertise, and results over smooth talking and corporate politics. During our initial meeting, while Victoria Morrison tried to impress him with her Harvard MBA credentials and agency awards, I presented a detailed analysis of his competitors' marketing weaknesses and showed him exactly how we could exploit those gaps. By the end of that 3-hour meeting, Blackstone looked at me and said, "Ms. Patterson, you understand my business better than most of my own executives. When can we start?" The success of the Blackstone account elevated my status within Morrison & Associates, but it also painted a target on my back. Victoria Morrison had founded the agency 15 years ago, and she wasn't used to being overshadowed by anyone, especially not by someone she considered beneath her in the corporate hierarchy. While I focused on delivering results for our clients, Victoria spent her time networking at country club events and industry galas, collecting awards and recognition that my work had made possible. Every Monday morning, I would arrive at the office by 6:30 a.m. to review client portfolios and prepare strategy updates. I maintained detailed files on every account, tracking performance metrics, market trends, and competitive analyses. My office walls were covered with industry publications, client testimonials, and handwritten thank you notes from satisfied customers. I had built Morrison & Associates' reputation, one successful campaign at a time, and I took pride in the fact that we had never lost a major client under my watch. But success in corporate America often breeds resentment, and Victoria Morrison's attitude toward me had been shifting for months. She began excluding me from executive meetings, making decisions about my accounts without consulting me, and taking credit for client wins in front of the board. I noticed the subtle changes. How she would interrupt me during client presentations, how she would schedule important calls when I was out of the office, how she would CC her assistant on emails meant for me. The warning signs were there, but I was too focused on my work to recognize them as preparation for what was coming. I believed that as long as I continued delivering exceptional results for our clients, my position would be secure. I was wrong. In corporate warfare, Talent and dedication are often liabilities, not assets. They make you a threat to people who have built their careers on taking credit for other people's work. The night before my termination, I had stayed late at the office preparing for a crucial presentation to Blackstone Industries. They were considering expanding their marketing budget by another $2 million, and I had developed a comprehensive strategy for launching their new industrial equipment line. I spent hours perfecting every slide, every data point, every compelling argument that would demonstrate why Morrison & Associates deserved their continued trust and investment. As I finally locked my office at 11 p.m., I felt confident and energized. The Blackstone presentation was scheduled for Thursday, and I knew it would be another major win for the agency. I had no idea that Victoria Morrison had already made her decision, and that my dedication to client success had just signed my termination papers. Tuesday morning began like any other. I arrived at Morrison & Associates at 6:45 a.m., my usual coffee in hand, ready to tackle another day of client strategy and account management. The office was quiet. Most employees didn't arrive until 8:30, which gave me precious, uninterrupted time to work on the Blackstone presentation and review overnight emails from our international clients. At exactly 9 a.m., Victoria Morrison's assistant, Jennifer Walsh, appeared at my office door. "Rachel, Ms. Morrison needs to see you in her office immediately," she said, her voice unusually formal and her eyes avoiding mine. Something in her tone made my stomach tighten, but I assumed it was about the Blackstone presentation, or perhaps a new account opportunity. Victoria's corner office was a monument to her ego. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Atlanta, expensive artwork, and a wall dedicated to industry awards and magazine covers featuring her perfectly styled blonde hair and practiced smile. She sat behind her massive mahogany desk like a queen on her throne, and for the first time I noticed that HR Director Patricia Holmes was seated in one of the leather chairs facing the desk. "Rachel, please sit down," Victoria said, her voice cold and professional. There was no warmth, no casual pleasantries that usually preceded our meetings. The atmosphere felt charged with tension, like the moment before a thunderstorm breaks. "We need to discuss a serious matter," Victoria continued, sliding a manila folder across the desk toward me. "Yesterday evening, I received a call from Richard Blackstone's office. They're concerned about some irregularities in their account management." My heart began racing. Irregularities? What kind of irregularities? I just reviewed their entire portfolio last night. Everything is on track, budgets are clean, and campaign performance is exceeding expectations. Victoria's lips curved into what could barely be called a smile. "According to their CFO, there are discrepancies in the billing reports you've been submitting. They're questioning whether certain charges were properly authorized. And, frankly, Richard is losing confidence in your ability to manage their account professionally." The words hit me like a physical blow. I had managed the Blackstone account with meticulous attention to detail for 2 years. Every expense was documented. Every charge was pre-approved. Every report was accurate to the penny. The accusation was not just false, it was professionally devastating. "Victoria, that's impossible," I said, my voice steady despite the panic building in my chest. "I can show you the documentation for every single charge. I have approval emails, signed authorizations, and detailed expense reports. There are no discrepancies." Patricia Holmes leaned forward, her expression carefully neutral. "Rachel, we've reviewed the documentation, and there are questions about $47,000 in charges over the past 6 months. Media buys that weren't properly authorized, consultation fees that exceed contracted amounts, and campaign expenses that appear to be inflated." I felt the blood drain from my face. Those charges were legitimate. I had personally negotiated those media placements and consultation agreements to deliver better results for Blackstone Industries. The inflated campaign expenses were actually cost savings I had achieved through vendor negotiations, money that I had returned to their account as budget surplus. "Let me get my files," I said, starting to stand. "I can clear this up in 5 minutes. Every one of those charges has proper documentation and client approval." "Sit down, Rachel," Victoria said sharply. "We've already made our decision. Effective immediately, you're terminated for cause. Breach of fiduciary duty and mismanagement of client funds. Security will escort you out. and your access to all systems has been revoked." The room began spinning. "You can't be serious. Victoria, you know these accusations are false. I've generated more revenue for this agency than any other account director. The Blackstone relationship exists because of the trust I've built with Richard over 2 years." Victoria's mask slipped for just a moment, and I saw something cold and calculating in her eyes. "Rachel, you've always been too close to our clients. Professional boundaries exist for a reason. Perhaps if you had focused more on internal relationships and company protocol instead of playing favorites with customers, we wouldn't be in this situation." The betrayal was breathtaking in its audacity. Victoria Morrison was firing me for being too good at my job, for building the exact kind of client relationships that had made her agency successful. But she was framing it as professional misconduct, creating a narrative that would destroy my reputation and ensure I couldn't easily move to a competitor. Patricia Holmes handed me a severance package and a non-disclosure agreement. "You'll receive 2 weeks' pay and continued health benefits for 30 days. In exchange, you agree not to contact any Morrison & Associates clients or discuss the circumstances of your termination with anyone in the industry." I stared at the documents, my hands trembling with rage and disbelief. The NDA was designed to silence me, to prevent me from defending myself or correcting the false narrative they were constructing. The severance package was insultingly small for someone who had generated millions in revenue. "I'm not signing this," I said, pushing the papers back across the desk. "And I'm not accepting your false accusations. When Richard Blackstone learns the truth about what you're doing, this agency will lose its most valuable client." Victoria's smile turned predatory. "Rachel, I think you're forgetting something important. Richard Blackstone called us with these concerns. He's already questioning your integrity. Do you really think he's going to believe your word over ours?" The security guard appeared in the doorway, a tall, uncomfortable-looking man who clearly didn't enjoy this part of his job. "Ma'am, I need to escort you to your office to collect your personal belongings." As I stood to leave, Victoria delivered her final blow. "Oh, and Rachel? The Blackstone presentation you were preparing? I'll be handling that personally on Thursday. I'm sure Richard will appreciate working with someone who understands proper professional boundaries." Quote. I walked out of that office with my head high, but inside I was shattered. Victoria Morrison hadn't just fired me. She had attempted to destroy my professional reputation and steal the relationship I had spent 2 years building. She thought she had won, that I would slink away quietly and let her claim credit for my work. She had no idea that her victory was about to become the biggest mistake of her career. The elevator ride down to the parking garage felt like the longest 60 seconds of my life. Security guard Mike Rodriguez, a decent man who had always been friendly during my 4 years at Morrison & Associates, walked beside me in uncomfortable silence. As we reached my car, he finally spoke. "Ms. Patterson, I don't know what happened up there, but everyone in this building knows you're good people. This doesn't feel right." He handed me my box of personal belongings and added quietly, "You might want to know that Ms. Morrison had me change the locks on your office yesterday evening. She's been planning this for a while." The revelation hit me like ice water. Victoria hadn't fired me because of any complaint from Richard Blackstone. She had orchestrated this entire scenario. The irregularities in the billing reports, the supposed concerns from Blackstone's CFO, the perfectly timed HR meeting. It was all theater designed to remove me before I could interfere with her plan to steal my client relationships. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, not starting the engine, just processing the magnitude of what had happened. My phone buzzed with text messages from colleagues who had already heard the news through the office grapevine. "What happened? Are you okay? This is insane. Everyone knows you're the best account director we have." But one message stood out from the others. It was from David Chen, my former assistant, who had been promoted to junior account executive 6 months ago. "Rachel, you need to know something. Victoria had me pull all the Blackstone files yesterday morning and make copies for her personal review. She said it was for a strategic assessment, but now I understand what she was really doing. She was preparing to take over the account." The pieces began falling into place. Victoria Morrison hadn't just fired me impulsively. She had been planning this takeover for weeks, possibly months. She had studied my client files, learned my strategies, and then created a false crisis to justify removing me from the equation. It was corporate sabotage executed with surgical precision. I drove home to my apartment in Buckhead, my mind racing with possibilities. The non-disclosure agreement I had refused to sign meant Victoria couldn't legally silence me. But it also meant I had no severance package and no safety net. More importantly, it meant she would likely escalate her efforts to destroy my professional reputation before I could mount any kind of defense. Around noon, my phone rang. Richard Blackstone's name appeared on the caller ID, and my heart began pounding. This was the moment of truth. Had Victoria's lies reached him, or did I still have a chance to tell my side of the story? A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. Rachel, what the hell's going on over there? Richard's gravelly voice was sharp with confusion and anger. I just got off the phone with Victoria Morrison, and she's telling me some story about billing irregularities and professional misconduct. She says you've been terminated, and that she'll be taking over my account personally. I took a deep breath and made the most important decision of my career. Richard, everything Victoria told you is a lie. There are no billing irregularities, no professional misconduct, and no complaints from your office. She fabricated this entire crisis so she could fire me and take control of your account. Silence stretched across the phone line. Then Richard spoke, his voice deadly calm. Are you telling me that Victoria Morrison lied to me about receiving concerns from my CFO? I'm telling you that no one from your organization ever contacted Morrison & Associates with any concerns about my account management. I can prove it. Every charge on your account has proper documentation and approval. Every campaign decision was made with your explicit consent. Victoria created this crisis because she wanted to steal the relationship I've built with your company. Richard Blackstone was many things. Demanding, direct, sometimes difficult, but he was also fiercely intelligent and had built his empire by trusting his instincts about people. Rachel, I've worked with you for 2 years. You've never given me a reason to doubt your integrity or competence. In fact, you're the most thorough account manager I've ever worked with. This doesn't add up. Richard, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Did anyone from your office, your CFO, your assistant, anyone, contact Morrison & Associates in the past week with concerns about billing or account management? Another pause, longer this time. No one from my organization has contacted your agency with any concerns. If there were problems with your work, they would have come to me first, and I would have called you directly. The validation felt like oxygen returning to my lungs. Victoria Morrison destroyed my career based on a lie. She terminated me this morning and told me that you had lost confidence in my abilities. She's planning to present to you on Thursday using the strategy I developed, claiming it as her own work. Richard's response was swift and decisive. Like hell she is. Rachel, I want you to listen to me very carefully. I don't do business with liars, and I sure as hell don't do business with people who throw their best employees under the bus for personal gain. That woman just made the biggest mistake of her professional life. Richard, I appreciate your support, but there's something else you need to know. Victoria made me sign out of all company systems this morning. I don't have access to your files, your campaign materials, or the presentation I was preparing for Thursday. She has everything. Does she have you? Richard asked pointedly. The question hung in the air, loaded with possibility. What do you mean? Rachel, you didn't just manage my account. You understood my business better than most of my own executives. The files and presentations don't matter. What matters is the relationship, the trust, and the expertise. Victoria Morrison might have stolen my paperwork, but she can't steal what's in your head. I felt something shift inside me, a spark of possibility in the darkness of my destroyed career. Richard, are you saying what I think you're saying? I'm saying that Morrison & Associates just lost their biggest client. The question is, what are you going to do about it? By 12:30 p.m., I was sitting in my apartment with my laptop, drafting the documents that would change everything. Richard Blackstone had given me something more valuable than sympathy or moral support. He had given me an opportunity to turn Victoria Morrison's betrayal into my greatest professional triumph. The irony was perfect. Victoria had fired me to steal my client, but in doing so, she had freed me to take that client away from her entirely. Her lie had become my liberation, and her greed was about to become her downfall. I opened a new document and began typing Blackstone Industries Independent Marketing Strategy Proposal. For the first time since 9 a.m., I smiled. By 1 p.m., I was no longer thinking like a fired employee. I was thinking like an entrepreneur. Richard Blackstone's words had flipped a switch in my mind. Victoria Morrison might have stolen my files, but she couldn't steal my expertise, my relationships, or my understanding of his business. More importantly, she had just handed me the perfect opportunity to demonstrate the difference between someone who manages accounts and someone who truly understands clients. I spent the next hour researching the legal requirements for starting an independent marketing consultancy in Georgia. The paperwork was surprisingly straightforward. Business license, tax ID number, professional liability insurance. I could be officially operational within 48 hours. But more importantly, I could start working immediately as an independent contractor. At 2:15 p.m., I called Richard back with a proposal that would change both of our lives. Richard, I want to present you with an alternative to Morrison and Associates. Instead of working through an agency that just proved they can't be trusted, what if you worked directly with me? Independent consulting, no corporate overhead, no account executives who don't understand your business. Just you, me, and results. Richard's response was immediate. I'm listening. What are you thinking? I'm thinking about a 6-month contract worth $2.1 million, exactly half of what you're currently paying Morrison and Associates, but with twice the personal attention and strategic focus. No junior associates handling your campaigns. No account coordinators who need everything explained twice. Just direct access to the person who knows your business better than anyone else in the marketing industry. The silence on the other end told me he was running numbers in his head. Richard Blackstone hadn't built an $800 million company by making emotional decisions. He calculated everything. Rachel, that's a compelling offer, but I need to understand the logistics. How do you handle media buying, creative production, campaign management? Morrison & Associates has a team of 30 people working on various aspects of my account. I had anticipated this question and spent the previous hour researching solutions. Richard, 80% of what Morrison & Associates does for you can be handled by strategic partnerships with specialized vendors. Media buying through Thompson Media Group, they're actually the same company Morrison uses, just with a markup. Creative production through Apex Design Studios, better work, faster turnaround, 40% lower cost. Campaign management and analytics through my own systems and direct vendor relationships. And the other 20%? The other 20% is strategic thinking, relationship management, and business understanding. That's what you're really paying for. And that's what Victoria Morrison can't replicate no matter how many of my files she studies. Richard was quiet for nearly a minute. When he spoke again, his voice carried the tone of a man who had made his decision. Rachel, I want you to prepare a comprehensive proposal for Thursday morning, same time as Morrison's presentation. I'll evaluate both options and make my decision by Friday. Richard, are you asking me to compete against my former employer for your business? No, Rachel. I'm asking you to show me what you can do when you're not constrained by corporate bureaucracy and office politics. Victoria Morrison thinks she can walk into my boardroom on Thursday and present your work as her own. I want to see what happens when you're free to present your best work without anyone else taking credit. After ending the call, I realized the magnitude of what I had just committed to. In less than 72 hours, I needed to create a comprehensive marketing strategy, establish vendor relationships, develop pricing models, and prepare a presentation that would determine the future of my career. It was overwhelming and exhilarating at the same time. I started with what I knew best, Richard Blackstone's business challenges and opportunities. While Victoria Morrison would be presenting generic agency solutions dressed up with my research, I could offer something she couldn't. Genuine innovation, tailored specifically to his company's unique position in the market. Over the next 6 hours, I developed a marketing strategy that went beyond anything I had ever created at Morrison & Associates. Free from agency constraints and corporate approval processes, I could propose bold, unconventional approaches that addressed Blackstone Industries' real strategic needs rather than what looked good in a PowerPoint presentation. The centerpiece of my proposal was a direct-to-industrial marketing campaign that would bypass traditional trade publications and advertising channels. Instead of competing for attention in crowded industry magazines, we would create exclusive executive briefings and private demonstration events that positioned Blackstone Industries as thought leaders, rather than just another equipment manufacturer. By 7 p.m., I had contacted 6 vendor partners and secured preliminary agreements for media buying, creative services, and campaign analytics. Each vendor offered better pricing and more personalized service than the corporate partners Morrison & Associates used. The cost savings alone would pay for my consulting fees while delivering superior results. But the real breakthrough came when I started thinking about what Victoria Morrison couldn't offer: continuity and institutional knowledge. She might have copied my files, but she had no relationship with Blackstone's key executives, no understanding of their internal politics, and no knowledge of the strategic initiatives I had been quietly supporting for months. At 8:30 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text message from David Chen, my former assistant at Morrison & Associates. "Rachel, you need to know what's happening here. Victoria spent all afternoon in Richard Blackstone's files, and she's panicking. She doesn't understand half of your strategic notes, and she's making Jennifer Walsh work late to recreate presentations you never finished. The Thursday meeting has been moved to 10 a.m., and she's already rescheduled it twice." The information was invaluable. Victoria Morrison was struggling to understand work she had never been involved in creating. She was trying to present strategies she hadn't developed to a client she barely knew. Meanwhile, I was free to innovate, to propose solutions I had been thinking about for months but never had the opportunity to implement under Morrison's conservative approach. By 10 p.m., I had the foundation of a proposal that would revolutionize how Blackstone Industries approached marketing. More importantly, I had something Victoria Morrison would never possess: the confidence that comes from genuine expertise rather than stolen materials. As I saved my work and prepared for bed, I realized that Victoria's betrayal had accomplished something she never intended. She had forced me to stop thinking like an employee and start thinking like an owner. She had pushed me out of my comfort zone and into a realm of possibilities I never would have explored while working for someone else. Thursday morning couldn't come fast enough. I was ready to show Richard Blackstone and Victoria Morrison what happened when you freed talent from corporate constraints. The student was about to become the master, and the fired employee was about to become the competition. Thursday morning arrived with the crisp clarity that only comes with absolute certainty. I woke up at 5 a.m., not from anxiety but from excitement. Today wasn't just a presentation. It was the day I would transform my professional destruction into personal triumph. By 6 a.m., I was dressed in my best navy suit, my presentation materials organized in a leather portfolio, and my confidence unshakable. At 8:30 a.m., I received a text from David Chen that made me smile. Victoria postponed her presentation again. Now it's 11 a.m. She's been in the office since 6 a.m., still trying to understand your strategic frameworks. Jennifer Walsh looks exhausted. I arrived at Blackstone Industries at 9:45 a.m. for my 10 a.m. meeting. The receptionist, Maria Santos, had always been friendly during my 2 years of regular visits, and her face lit up when she saw me. "Ms. Patterson, it's so good to see you. Mr. Blackstone is waiting for you in conference room A." She leaned forward conspiratorially. "He's been looking forward to this meeting all week. Something about, quote, seeing what real expertise looks like without corporate interference." Richard Blackstone's conference room was a testament to his journey from factory floor to executive suite. Industrial photography mixed with elegant furnishings, a reminder that success came from understanding both the practical and strategic sides of business. Richard was already seated at the head of the table, flanked by his CFO, Michael Torres, and Operations Director, Lisa Chang. "Rachel, thank you for coming. Before we begin, I want you to know that I had an interesting conversation with Victoria Morrison yesterday. She called to, quote, clarify some details about your termination." Richard's expression was unreadable, but there was steel in his voice. My heart rate quickened, but I maintained eye contact. "What kind of clarification?" "She wanted to make sure I understood that you had been terminated for cause, and that any attempt to work with you directly would be inadvisable due to, quote, ongoing investigations into your professional conduct." Richard paused, letting the words hang in the air. I asked her to send me documentation of these investigations. Michael Torres leaned forward. She couldn't provide any documentation because there are no investigations. We had our legal team do a background check yesterday. Rachel, your professional record is spotless. Victoria Morrison lied to us about the circumstances of your termination. The validation was sweet, but I kept my focus on the business at hand. Richard, I'm not here to relitigate the past. I'm here to show you the future. May I begin my presentation? Quote, for the next 45 minutes, I presented a marketing strategy that was unlike anything Morrison and Associates had ever delivered. Instead of generic corporate solutions, I offered innovative approaches tailored specifically to Blackstone Industries' unique market position. I proposed executive thought leadership programs, strategic partnerships with industry influencers, and direct access marketing campaigns that would bypass traditional advertising altogether. The centerpiece was a revolutionary approach to industrial marketing that I called strategic proximity. Instead of competing for attention in crowded trade publications, we would create exclusive events and private briefings that positioned Blackstone Industries as the preferred partner for high-level decision-makers. Traditional industrial marketing treats your customers like demographics, I explained, clicking to my final slide. Strategic proximity treats them like individuals with specific business challenges that your products can solve. Instead of shouting your message into a crowded marketplace, we create intimate environments where your value proposition becomes impossible to ignore. Lisa Chang was the first to respond. Rachel, this is brilliant. You're not just proposing marketing campaigns. You're proposing a complete reimagining of how we engage with our customers. Richard nodded slowly, his eyes still focused on my presentation materials. The cost savings alone are significant. 20% less than our current agency fees, but with what appears to be substantially higher strategic value. Richard, there's something else, I said, pulling out a folder I had prepared. Morrison & Associates has been marking up vendor costs by an average of 35%. Media buying, creative services, production work. They've been charging you premium prices for standard services. Working directly with me eliminates those markups while giving you access to superior vendors. Michael Torres whistled softly. That represents nearly $600,000 annually in unnecessary overhead. More than that, I continued, it represents a fundamental misalignment between your interests and your agency's interests. Morrison & Associates profits more when your marketing costs are higher. I profit more when your marketing results are better. Richard stood up and walked to the window overlooking his manufacturing facility. Rachel, I have one more question. Victoria Morrison is presenting to us at 11 a.m. She'll be using materials and strategies developed during your time at Morrison & Associates. How do I evaluate her presentation knowing that it's based on your work? I had anticipated this question and prepared carefully for my response. Richard, evaluate her presentation on its own merits. Ask her to explain the strategic thinking behind each recommendation. Ask her about implementation timelines, vendor relationships, and performance metrics. Most importantly, ask her about contingency planning. What happens when campaigns need to be adjusted? When market conditions change? When new opportunities arise? And if she can't answer those questions, then you'll know the difference between someone who can present a strategy and someone who can execute one. At exactly 11 a.m., my phone buzzed with a call from David Chen. I let it go to voicemail, but the message was worth hearing. Rachel, Victoria just postponed again. She's asking for more time to, quote, finalize her recommendations. The meeting is now at 2 p.m., and she looks terrified. Richard, Michael, and Lisa exchanged glances. It appears we have some time before the next presentation, Richard said with a slight smile. Rachel, would you be willing to stay and discuss implementation details? For the next 2 hours, we worked through logistics, timelines, and performance benchmarks. By 1 p.m., I had a signed letter of intent for a 6-month consulting contract worth $2.1 million, with performance bonuses that could increase the total to $2.8 million. As I prepared to leave, Richard walked me to the elevator. Rachel, I want you to know something. Victoria Morrison's deception didn't just cost her your account. It revealed something about her character that makes me question every aspect of my relationship with Morrison & Associates. Even if you hadn't presented today, I would have terminated our contract with them. What will you tell her when she presents this afternoon? Richard smiled, and for the first time, I saw genuine warmth in his expression. I'm going to listen politely to her presentation, ask her the questions you suggested, and then inform her that Blackstone Industries will no longer require their services. As the elevator doors closed, I realized that Victoria Morrison's betrayal had accomplished something she never intended. She had forced me to discover my own value, to stop thinking like an employee and start thinking like an entrepreneur. Her lie had become my liberation, and her greed had become the foundation of my independence. By noon, I owned the contract that had once made me Morrison & Associates' most valuable employee. By 2 p.m., Victoria Morrison would learn that her victory had lasted exactly 5 hours, and that sometimes the greatest revenge is simply succeeding on your own terms. 6 months later, I stood in the corner office of Patterson Strategic Marketing, watching the Atlanta skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows that rivaled anything Morrison & Associates had to offer. The business I had built from nothing was now generating $8.2 million in annual revenue, with 12 full-time employees and a client roster that included 3 Fortune 500 companies. The Blackstone Industries contract had been just the beginning. Word travels fast in the business community, and Richard Blackstone's enthusiastic endorsements opened doors I never could have accessed as an agency employee. CEOs who had been politely distant during my Morrison & Associates days were now calling me directly, seeking the kind of personalized strategic consulting that large agencies simply couldn't provide. My assistant, Jennifer Martinez, yes, I had hired Jennifer Walsh away from Victoria Morrison with a 40% salary increase, knocked on my office door. Rachel, Richard Blackstone is here for your quarterly review meeting. Also, there's a reporter from Atlanta Business Chronicle waiting in the conference room. She wants to discuss the article about your company being named Marketing Consultancy of the Year. The success felt surreal at times. 6 months ago, I had been terminated for cause and nearly blacklisted from the industry. Today, I was being profiled in business magazines as an example of entrepreneurial innovation in professional services. Richard entered my office with his characteristic directness, but his expression was more relaxed than I had ever seen it. Rachel, I have news that I think you'll find interesting. Morrison & Associates filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection last week. I set down my coffee, genuinely shocked. Bankruptcy? How is that possible? After they lost my account, 3 other major clients terminated their contracts within 60 days. Apparently, Victoria Morrison had been using similar tactics with other account directors, taking credit for their work, undermining their client relationships, and eventually forcing out anyone who threatened her position. Quote, Richard sat down across from my desk, his expression becoming more serious. The difference was that most of their other clients didn't have the kind of personal relationship with their account directors that I had with you. When those employees left, the clients stayed with the agency out of inertia or contractual obligations. But they also started questioning the quality of service, the continuity of strategy, and the value they were receiving. What happened to Victoria? She's currently facing several lawsuits from former employees for wrongful termination and defamation. It turns out that the billing irregularities she accused you of were actually irregularities she had been creating herself, inflating charges, marking up vendor costs beyond contracted amounts, and billing clients for work that was never performed. The irony was breathtaking. Victoria Morrison had destroyed her own company by systematically removing the talented people who had built her success, while engaging in the exact kind of professional misconduct she had falsely accused me of committing. Richard, I have to ask, did you know this when you hired me? He smiled, the expression of a man who had built his fortune by understanding people. Rachel, I didn't know the specifics, but I knew Victoria Morrison's character. Anyone who would lie about their best employee's performance to steal client relationships is someone who would lie about other things too. I started investigating Morrison & Associates the day after you were fired. Jennifer appeared in the doorway again. Rachel, I'm sorry to interrupt, but you have a call from David Chen. He says it's urgent. David had become my first full-time employee after leaving Morrison & Associates 3 months ago. His voice was excited when I answered the call. Rachel, you're not going to believe this. I just got off the phone with Marcus Thompson from Thompson Media Group. Victoria Morrison contacted them yesterday trying to get vendor pricing for a, quote, new agency she's starting. When Marcus told her that Thompson Media Group was now exclusively partnered with Patterson Strategic Marketing, she actually started crying on the phone. The news should have felt like vindication, but instead, I felt something unexpected: pity. Victoria Morrison had destroyed everything she had built because she couldn't tolerate sharing credit with the people who had made her successful. After ending the call, Richard looked at me with curiosity. How does it feel, knowing that your former boss lost everything while you built an empire? I considered the question carefully. Honestly, it feels like justice, but not the kind I would have chosen. I never wanted to destroy Morrison and Associates. I just wanted to do great work for clients I cared about. Victoria's downfall was self-inflicted, a consequence of prioritizing ego over excellence. Richard nodded approvingly. That attitude is exactly why you'll continue to succeed where she failed. You understand that business is about serving others, not serving yourself. The reporter from Atlanta Business Chronicle, Sarah Kim, joined us in the conference room for what became a 2-hour interview about entrepreneurship, client relationships, and the future of marketing consulting. Her final question was the one I had been expecting. Rachel, your story has become legendary in Atlanta business circles. Fired at 9 a.m., signed your biggest client by noon, built a multi-million-dollar company within 6 months. What advice would you give to other professionals who face betrayal or setbacks in their careers? I thought about the question for a moment, remembering the despair I had felt in that elevator 6 months ago and comparing it to the confidence I felt today. I would tell them that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you professionally becomes the best thing that ever happened to you personally. When Victoria Morrison fired me, she thought she was ending my career. What she actually did was force me to discover my own value and stop depending on other people's recognition for my sense of worth. But more specifically, I continued, I would tell them to focus on relationships over politics, results over recognition, and long-term value over short-term victories. The clients who matter will recognize genuine expertise and integrity. The ones who don't aren't worth having anyway. Sarah scribbled notes furiously. And what's next for Patterson Strategic Marketing? We're expanding into strategic consulting for mid-market companies, businesses that are too large for traditional marketing agencies but too small to justify internal marketing departments. It's an underserved market with tremendous potential for growth. As the interview concluded and Richard prepared to leave, he handed me an envelope. Rachel, this is from the Blackstone Industries Board of Directors. We want you to consider a strategic partnership proposal. Patterson Strategic Marketing would become the exclusive marketing partner for all Blackstone subsidiaries and joint ventures. It's worth approximately $12 million annually. I opened the envelope and reviewed the proposal summary. It was more than just a contract. It was validation that the relationships I had built were valuable enough to anchor an entire business expansion. Richard, this is incredibly generous, but I have to ask, why? You could partner with any major agency in the country. His answer was simple and profound. Rachel, you've shown me something that most business leaders never learn. Loyalty isn't about contracts or corporate relationships. It's about trust between individuals who share the same commitment to excellence. That's worth more than any agency's credentials or awards. That evening, I stood alone in my office after everyone had gone home, looking out at the city lights and reflecting on the journey that had brought me here. 6 months ago, I had been a talented employee trapped in someone else's vision of success. Today, I was an entrepreneur building my own definition of achievement. The phone on my desk rang one final time. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize, but the voice was unmistakable. Rachel, this is Victoria Morrison. I wanted to call and apologize. I sat down slowly, unprepared for this conversation. Victoria, I appreciate you calling, but... Please, let me finish, she interrupted, her voice strained with exhaustion. I destroyed everything because I was threatened by your success. I convinced myself that you were trying to undermine me, when really you were just better at the job than I was. My pride cost me my company, my reputation, and my career. I listened in silence, recognizing the pain in her voice but feeling no satisfaction in her downfall. "I don't expect forgiveness," Victoria continued. "I just wanted you to know that you were right about everything. You deserved better from me, and your clients deserved better than what I became." After she hung up, I sat in the quiet of my office for nearly an hour, processing the conversation. Victoria Morrison's apology didn't change the past, but it confirmed something I had learned over the past 6 months. Success built on other people's failures is temporary, but success built on your own excellence is permanent. I turned off the lights and headed home, knowing that tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, and new chances to prove that sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's simply becoming everything you were meant to be. The girl who had been fired at 9 a.m. was gone. In her place stood a woman who had learned that true power comes not from surviving betrayal, but from transforming it into triumph. And that transformation had only just begun. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.